Deadpool and Wolverine. I give it 7 out of 10. It is very disappointing. Um, I've had to record this several times because it always turns into way too long. So this is going to be hopefully my briefest one because you're going to rant all day about what's wrong with this movie. But it gets 7 out of 10. I think I'm being extra generous. I don't hate this movie. It's just such a disappointment. Part of it's my fault. I thought I was prepared going in with low expectations. I should have went in with 0 expectations. I bought some of the hype. I gotta give it to him. He tricked me. Reynolds and Disney, they tricked with the shills and the influencers and the reactors and the marketing and the commercials. I believed, I assumed I wasn't going to like the story or plot, but I did think that it was going to have the heart that they promised and that Deadpool movies and X-Men movies had. And they through the influencers kept promising of honoring, bringing in all these great past Fox characters and honoring them. Well, they lied, and I fell for it. They did the exact opposite, and they'll stick to their guns. They did, and they even in the movie, again, really terrible. The last 10 years, millennial Gen Z writing, movie making mentality. We'll tell you how to feel. We'll tell you. We'll spoon feed you what you're supposed to react and how you're supposed to react. No, you can't do that. You're supposed to make us feel it. That's good storytelling and movie making, but they didn't do that. So they force fed us, telling us that it was going to have all these things, and then in the movie, when they were trying to force feed those moments in without building and creating them naturally, like they did in X-Men movies and Deadpool 1 and 2, they would practically turn to the camera. Even Elektra literally says, "This is my moment. This is our ending." Because they're trying to counter the fact that actually what they did was use and abuse characters. They went back to this millennial way of storytelling where you tell people what to think and feel instead of create it through meaningful character development and story development. They didn't do that. And also this mentality of this entitlement of when they take genres and just play with them like kids in a toy box, in a sandbox. And that's what this movie was. And I thought Reynolds was going to, from all the hype, that he was going to protect against that, but he did not. This was absolute sandbox mentality. Every character was used and abused. Wolverine and Deadpool the least. Deadpool the least. The absolute least. He was the most closest to his. Surprise, surprise. Reynolds. But Wolverine, that didn't feel like Wolverine to me. Even they tried to tell us it was by first telling us he was the worst Wolverine and then tell us he was the best. Yeah, stop telling us how to feel. And it's not the actor's fault. It's the writing. It's all writing. The acting was fantastic by everybody. Everybody brought the acting, thank heaven, or it would have been unwatchable. It was enough money put into it, not in the right places, but put into it that it was watchable. The great production. The writing. It was flawed writing from the start all the way through. Bad intentions. Guy pretending and then selling themselves as good intentions. No, this was force feeding two universes together, which it technically inadequately did, but it did so in a brutal way, and it used and abused characters again and again and again. And it promised all these great characters we didn't get to see. We didn't get to see 20 years. They even tell us you waited 20 years to see Sabretooth in the battle, and we don't get to see it. He decapitates them. And they use the influencers to make us think it was a fake out to the Hulk battle. That would be the big battle. And we don't get to see that one either. And we don't get to see any big characters. And they cock tease us with the Hulk and they cock tease us with Thor. Which, by the way, is just going to be a Secret Wars. They'll give Deadpool a small part in the plot, and he'll have a small little end death scene to give him a little moment, and that's what that will be. I'll bet you anything. But force feeding, but used and abused. Torch, used and abused, all for the sake of a couple jokes. Jokes at it's not Captain America, and jokes later on, wasn't it funny that he got brutally murdered for no reason? The Deadpool characters, used and abused. First of all, it made no sense. If anybody would relate and join his cause, it would be them. And I think a lot of us just assumed, and because of the dog, that they were going to join him. For them just to be fodder for a really gratuitous. Here's the thing. They joke about in Deadpool 1 and 2 that the violence was gratuitous, which is a funny joke, but it's not true. For the most part, it serves a purpose. Same with the crassness and the swearing. It serves a purpose. Those two movies have really good character development and stories. This movie did not. So they just use the Deadpool things. We don't get, like the whole movie, we don't get any answers about who the female was or anything to know about the characters. And the dog pool character wasn't anything about a pool character except it was a dog in a pool costume. But there was nothing Deadpool about that dog that we were shown. Where else? So many, but the Juggernaut character, again, if you're going to bring it, I get you're going to have fun because you don't need to bring it because it's the multiverse. You can have other people play it, but you should have, especially if you're merging worlds, you should have brought back real characters, but they didn't. They brought back false ones. The lady with the finger, the knife fingers that fought Wolverine in X-Men, they didn't bring her back. There was a Latin lady, it turns out, that was played as Juggernaut. It was some other dude. Instead of the other two Juggernauts, which would have been better and would have merged the worlds better. Yes, bring some new ones, but not badly or for no purpose. For the villains, it was for no purpose, and badly, that leads us to the crappiest Gambit I've ever seen. The old Gambit would have been better. Elektra, who cares? But they didn't really give her, for those that love Elektra, come on, you really think that's a better ending for her than her own movies? Same with Blade. They were just fodder. They may or not have died, I don't know, because they brought back, at the end, we see that X-23 survived, so maybe they did, but still, that was no epic ending. Their endings in their movies were way better. This was just using them. So I wouldn't say they were abused, but they were used. But the ones that were slaughtered, they were used and abused. The villains and Torch. Yeah. Weak writing. And again, it started out weak by killing the story that we had, one of the most beautiful love stories and meaty love stories that they had built. Even they crossed over in Deadpool 1 and 2, crossed death to talk to each other. I mean, and then just to kill it because he didn't get to be an Avenger and she didn't think he was living up to his potential. How lame. And again, abandoning the whole fatherhood theme, which was number 2, which would have been the perfect one. If they had lost a baby, boy, would that would have made us understand why they'd be apart and would then justify them coming back together, because it didn't mean they weren't soulmates. It just means if the one thing that can break up soulmates, it's loss of a child. But no, they chose the weakest reason. And just forget the whole childhood thing and forget the whole being a mentor to that boy. So the boy wasn't in it. Cable wasn't in it after what he sacrificed for Deadpool. Colossus was just a toy. I wouldn't say he was abused, but he was just used. All his characters, from if they were either didn't get a place in this movie or they were just used. They weren't abused, but they were just used as props. They should have had a more meaningful Miller. If you were going to part ways because you couldn't get along, him and Reynolds, they should have just thrown lots of money at him and said, listen, let's part ways, but come back for this one last one. You're going to be the comedy relief, because there was no comedy relief except Deadpool, and his jokes did not land like the first two movies. I only laughed once, literally once. But Miller would have helped that with that, and he could have gone to. It would have been good if they wrote him in that he went to the void with him, so that would have been more world merging, because it's not just Deadpool in that world, but now his own buddy is with him. He could have been added way more better jokes and more meat, and he could have died and had a lovely death scene. So he could have made a deal, said, listen, we'll throw a ton of money at you, we'll give you a hero death scene, and then we'll never work with you again. How's that sound? And Miller would have said yes, and that would have helped the movie, the merging of the universes, the humor. But no, Miller was gone, the boy was gone, Cable was gone. The rest were just used. Stinker. Stink, stink, stink. So I'm going to wrap this up. Very disappointing. My fault for having any expectations going in, but it's passable, but this doesn't even come close to measuring up to Deadpool 1 or 2 or any of the X-Men movies except for the last couple. They stunk. And a lot of the Marvel movies that were hits, that were good, like Infinity War's not even in the same realm. So if this is how they're going to go going into merging them and going into Secret Wars and the other stuff, we're in trouble, folks. We got to just start making our own content, finding ways to share it with each other. Which is what YouTube was supposed to be, by the way, back in the day before it got... But anyways, let's talk about one disaster at a time. So thumbs down on... it gets a pass because of the money and the heart of the acting, and just for the past, really, I'll give it a 7, but it's a very reluctant 7. It's barely a pass. So hopefully, if you saw this, because it's as a spoiler review, you already saw it too, and this just helped confer your disappointment, and hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully, if Deadpool comes back, it'll be a separate movie and they'll get back on track, because this was not. It was Deadpool, but it was a watered down Deadpool that just with extra violence and swearing, gratuitous, and this did not feel very Wolverine-y. A hint of it, but the others were way more, felt like Wolverine character, and it felt very thrown together. Sorry, folks, that's my review.